Welcome to Indie Film Podcast. I'm Victoria.
I am Chuck, and we are your Indie Film Podcast hosts. Our goal is to share all the mistakes we've made in our filmmaking journey so you can avoid them.
We are joint owners of over 75 rejection letters from film festivals.
Follow us on our journey as we attempt to break into the national film scene, or maybe we're just going to keep incurring more and more debt. Because film stuff is expensive.
Why is gear so expensive?
I think it's a racket. I don't know. Lenses and microphones, always a good investment, but camera bodies and field recorders.
Rough.
Man, well, no, I guess field recorders are okay. Audio hasn't changed much in decades. It's this this is video stuff that's nuts. What are we talking about today, Victoria? I have my script up here. She knows the answer to that, but let's make sure the audience is in the loop.
As we continue with January's topic of pre-production pitfalls, this episode is episode number 2, discussing inadequate rehearsals.
I hate rehearsing.
I love rehearsing.
No, it's definitely important. Podcasts, not quite as necessary.
Fair.
We just make notes before we talk.
That's enough.
But if you're making a movie,
maybe do more than that.
Because we have both shared experiences, not separately, we have a shared experience of going into a filmmaking set not having had enough rehearsal.
Yes.
Let me look at the first question here. Have you suffered from shooting? How? I'm sorry.
There was a how.
There's a how in that. Have you suffered from not rehearsing and not reading the questions prior to your podcast? Victoria, how have you suffered from shooting prior to rehearsing, without rehearsing with cast and crew?
I think hands down one of the biggest examples that I can think of is the What's the Worst That Could Happen short that I did.
Oh, okay. I was on set on that one.
You were on set for that one.
You didn't have the actors rehearse?
No, not really.
And how did you suffer on that one?
I think it made it a lot more difficult on the actors to not understand. The entire concept of this film was to have a really unique, sort of kitschy almost editing style to it.
Yeah.
And I think hearing about that and then rehearsing together with the actors, because technically the two leads aren't in any scenes together because the whole thing is a phone conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Where they're in two separate places.
Yeah, there was no interaction between the actors.
No. And
you didn't have the other actor on set.
For the second day, which was rough.
Wait, so one phone conversation, both of them were in the room together? I don't think any of them were.
No. So that was Katie and Sammy were the two actors in that one. And for Sammy's shoot in the hotel room, Katie was there.
That's right.
Not the entire time, but Katie was there.
I remember that now. Yeah.
So that was helpful for those moments.
Mm-hmm.
But it became very obvious to me, especially in the edit later. It would have been really kind of me as the director to have allowed those two to work together and build a rapport together so that it would have made those scenes flow a little bit better for them. I will say they both absolutely knocked it out of the park and they're incredible. And I love them both intensely and deeply. But I could have been nicer to them and given them the opportunity to rehearse.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that one. That's a good example. You're having them play off of each other, and you're creating that in post, and you might have an idea about that, but you never know it's going to come out when you have people on set.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes that's a bad thing.
It can go either way real fast. I got lucky it went well, but...
But if you're rehearsing, you can fix the bad thing. And if something good comes out of it, then you can adapt it and then maybe adjust your shot list because you did have a rehearsal with the actors.
Yeah.
Which is good. Yes. Rehearsals. First film, Brown Truck, which if you subscribe to LowerGentry Studios newsletter, I'm a co-owner of LowerGentry Studios. You can watch LowerGentry Studios' first feature film, Brown Truck, which was a little bit of a dumpster fire. This was the quintessential, we're going to make a movie with friends feature film.
Yeah.
And naturally, you assume that you're Kevin Smith, right?
Yeah.
Like, nobody goes into making a feature film not assuming that they're Kevin Smith.
Though it's really funny that you mentioned that because as far as rehearsal stuff goes, I specifically have a reference to Clerks later on.
Oh, because there was a lack of rehearsals in that one?
No, just because the way they have to shape the dialogue and everything. It's I won't jump into it now. I just think it's really funny that we both went to Kevin Smith for rehearsals.
Oh, well, I mean, the dialogue comes off as very natural in
Exactly.
his movies. My my point was that like he probably did rehearse,
Yes.
whereas we were shooting a film with friends, didn't get quite enough rehearsals in, and then I do remember our poor friend Josiah was only speaking Russian, and it was nice of. Like we've had the foresight to have one of our friends translate the script into Russian, and then
Awesome.
we're like, hey, here are your lines, and here's the pronunciation. Memorize all this stuff, and then we just left it. And it's like you can't just leave somebody on their own with a whole bunch of Russian to memorize that has zero history with the Russian language. So what we ended up doing is we ended up having him. The idea was that he had like this highly like this was before real time translation, and so like he had this app that he developed, and he would just speak into the phone, and it would translate his Russian live into English, and then vice versa, so that he could understand people, but he had a headphone in, so that we didn't have to go from back.
This was happening in the film.
In the film, yes, yes. So he just held his phone in front of his mouth, and then he would just count. And then in post-production, we went through and then had him ADR all of his Russian lines in.
Oh.
And then on the audio end, I had to like speed things up or slow them down.
Because the count wasn't perfect, maybe.
Yeah, and we couldn't quite, the editing didn't quite, it was a disaster. So some rehearsals would have been real helpful on that. And plus, we were all friends. And aside from Zoe Kelly, who was the one person that auditioned for one open role in that film, and she actually can act.
Yes.
And everybody else, we were just, assuming that we knew how to act, kind of like everybody assumes they know how to sing if they've heard singing. Not everybody assumes
It was like,
they
I
know
don't
how
know.
to sing.
Everyone does think they're a marketer, though.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
There.
You're a market. Yeah, everybody thinks they know how social media works and how marketing works. It's like a lot of people, for some reason, they're like, oh, you got to just act naturally, read the lines naturally, blah, 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 blah. No, we could have used a lot more rehearsals. Did Kevin Smith have his actors rehearse a bunch since he was using Friends? Is that what you were going to say
No,
next?
I was actually gonna focus more on specifically your comment about the dialogue.
Oh, okay.
That's where I was gonna go with it. So
Please,
that's
enlighten
later.
me.
Oh, it's, you know what? Okay, let's just hop into specifically. I mean, it's kind of the closing question about getting better about rehearsals.
Oh, I want to know how to get better at rehearsals.
Well, how did you get better about rehearsals?
Have more rehearsals.
Yeah, that's pretty much the only way to get better. Which is so weird. So I've definitely directed more theater than film, right?
Which theater you need to have a whole bunch of rehearsals.
And you do.
Because you want it to go well live.
Yeah.
And I'm a musician, and you practice your set list before you play a lot.
Yeah.
Because
and
it's
yet,
live.
For films, it's really easy to think, oh, the actors are solid. They know what they're doing. It's okay. Because you can always cut it, or you might, we'll fix it in post.
Ooh.
Ugh,
That's gonna be another series here coming up. In like March or April. I'm not quite sure. But we're gonna talk about fixing in post because we've done a lot of fixing in post. But
But
please continue.
I just think that as far as your rehearsals go, because there are so many other places that you do not see it as negotiable. If you have a big presentation at work or school or wherever you're at, or if you're on live stage doing anything, music performance, dance performances, theater performances, rehearsal is just a given. You just expect it, you know it, and I think the more I get into directing film, the more I'm realizing it's really important to rehearse things, not just for your actors, though. I think it's actually really helpful for your crew, even if you don't have your full crew there for your rehearsals, which because that could be a nightmare for budget and for people's time. But I think that having at least your cinematographer, a couple of people from your art department, if you can, like your costumer or your production designer at the very least, like somebody needs to see who these characters are becoming and how this is all supposed to play out and where you're going to be at so that they know how to frame a shot. What would this person actually want to be wearing? What is not feasible for them to be wearing? right now. If you've got a big fight scene or a brawl or something, you probably don't want everyone in short dresses.
No.
Unless you're making a different kind of movie.
Yeah, good point. Which you wouldn't be able to upload on the internet in Idaho because we don't allow those movies on the internet in Idaho.
Not anymore.
This is filmed in Idaho, by the way.
For those of you who don't know.
We're Idaho indie filmmakers.
Yep.
And we can't do indie filmmaking porn unless we send it out of state.
Which is entertaining. Okay. So are there any stories that you would like to share about famous films and rehearsals?
Yeah, what did I write on here? So famous films and rehearsals. I'm pretty sure I wanted to talk about the Primer. I don't know if we watched the indie film Primer.
Yeah.
And the director, I forgot his name. He ended up getting Me Too'd because he was a giant dick.
Well, then he deserved what came to him.
But Shane Carruth. So like he was an asshole. But Primer is really cool. It's an indie film about time travel. Here's a quote from David Sullivan. He's the one that played the other star. So it was Shane Carruth was the main dude, and then David Sullivan was the other. Primer was made for $7,000. And that was just 5 of us running around with a camera in Dallas, Texas. I'm really fortunate as an actor because that was my first role, and we got this opportunity to tell this tale of time travel. With that kind of storytelling, there is no way that anyone is going to believe it unless they believe in the characters. It's an independent film with no special effects and almost no budget, so the story has to be right. Primer won Sundance in 2004, and it was released later that year, 2005. Every inch of film we shot in that movie, with the exception of maybe 30 feet, we used.
Wow.
So they filmed that on actual film stock.
Yeah.
And 30 feet is not that much. It doesn't take long to run. So there was only like a couple of minutes of leeway.
Oh.
And they had to like scrap film together. So they basically had to rehearse every single scene perfectly because they didn't get to do a second take on anything. And they had to cut like within moments of hitting record on the camera.
That is a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot.
So every scene was essentially live on that one.
Okay, but then they were going to rehearse a lot. They knew they had to.
Yeah, and they knew how the edit was going to look too, which is pretty wild.
So then it almost makes me wonder, now that we're in such a digital age where everyone has unlimited cloud storage on their phones.
Yeah.
Do we tend to not stress the importance of rehearsal because we know we could just do it again anyway?
Yeah. I think that I worked with somebody at one of my former tech company jobs, and he used to drive me crazy because he used to say, "Oh, digital film is free."
Yeah.
And he was not in the film department. So I did training videos and crap like that for this giant tech firm whose name I'm not going to say because I will not endorse them. But that thought process of, film is free, but my time isn't.
No.
And when you're on commercial sets, sometimes that might be another thing to think of is people are trying to navigate the film world, the indie film world. A lot of us end up doing jobs that are related to narrative film, but not really because we're just working with camera or working with microphones or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
And the idea that digital film is free doesn't take into consideration time and effort.
I think it also just takes away from things at the end. When you start really viewing things as just so limitless and inconsequential, then it, I don't know, kind of makes it less impactful in my mind. Right?
Yeah.
Because suddenly why would you put in the effort to do this really, really well 2 or 3 times when you could half-ass it and give next to no effort for 50 or 60 times, but one of them will work. It's fine.
Mm. But we do run into that on indie film sets, unfortunately, is like you start losing daylight.
Yeah.
And then you're looking at your shot list, which we're going to talk about.
Yep.
We're going to talk about shot list this month, as well as running behind on set. But you end up looking at everything, and it's like, oh, crap. I have all these people that are, volunteers, and or if you're fortunate enough to have enough money to pay people for a short film or a feature, and you don't have a lot of budget, you're still working on weekends and evenings.
Yeah.
and not very often do you get to shoot, and bring people on that are contract workers. So unless maybe, I guess sometimes you can get some crew that do that, in which case you really want to have that stuff.
Which is why you should
dialed
always
in.
film in a college town. So there's always university students.
Bring them on.
We love you, interns.
Yes. Shout out to Boise State.
Thank you, Boise State.
Yes, we've definitely had some amazing help from Boise State students. All right, next question. What do we got next?
Actually, wait, I had one that I wanted to mention for the famous films and rehearsals. I know it does kind of touch back a little bit to theater.
Yeah.
But, and I'll be 100% honest with you at this point, I've heard this so many times that I actually am worried it's one of those backward internet things where I've heard it so many times I'm not actually sure it's true.
It doesn't matter. As long as it's a cliche, then we can just say it and just hope it's true.
I'm so positive it's true. So it was Singin' in the Rain.
Okay.
And it was the titular number, Singing in the Rain. And Gene Kelly, according to the rumors on the internet, was sick as a dog, had the flu horribly.
Really?
Yes.
I haven't heard this cliche at all.
Oh, okay. Well, then maybe...
I'm not a student of musicals, though.
I adore musicals so much. Anyway, so for Singin' in the Rain,
yeah,
it is actually a pretty intense dance number. Of course, Gene Kelly, why wouldn't it? Well, anyway, the film is amazing. I love it. But there was no way they would have been able to film that and do that if they had not had the rehearsal time that they put in. Obviously, yes, some of it goes to the, overall character and dedication from the actor, but if you know everything inside and out, you're very confident in your abilities to move and hit your marks appropriately, then suddenly you can get through something like being violently ill during a scene.
Because it's going to just boil down to muscle memory.
Yeah.
At that juncture.
Exactly.
And if you are a director with a specific vision and having everybody be able to read exactly how you want the lines read during rehearsal, that's going to save you so much time when you have the crew there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But
So much
again, really helpful if your DP or at least an ace, somebody on your camera team has at least seen what the general shot setup should be. They know the space. They know where the actors are going to move. They have a better idea for how to set up the gear, where to put it. What are your options as far as, do we have the space here to set up 2 or 3 cameras to get multiple angles at the same time so we can cut down on overall shooting time? All those things happen when you bring more people into the room and you have those conversations during rehearsals.
Yeah. We actually, you're making me think of one of the lessons that we learned, which it wasn't a lesson that we learned. It was just an impossibility in filmmaking, was that for Stockton to Table Rock, we had a follow shot right at the beginning of the movie, but we only had so many days in the school, and there was no way for us to have any time to rehearse in the hallway.
Yeah.
To get this down, and we didn't have like a similar space because it was like, I don't know, like 50 feet of following and blocking and having people move in and out, and so.
And it started all the way outside, like the entire shot setup started outside the school with 2 of your characters, one of them getting out of the car and then joining the other person, and then once you actually got into the hallway. So you had to have that whole thing, even if it wasn't just one shot. Yeah. The whole tracking process had to line up and flow.
Yes, correct. And the tracking shot took us, oh man, I wish Elliot were here because he remembered. It was the day that we went over the most. We did well on Stockton to Table Rock eventually. That was our 3rd feature film at LowerGentry Studios, and we got to the point where we were under or on time, maybe within 5 minutes. But that shooting day, I want to say it ended up being like 45 minutes or maybe an hour, and it was just because of that one shot. We're like, oh, cool, we can get 5 takes on this. Yeah. And then once we got to like 15. And it was problem solving, and it was dealing with, different equipment, you know, and so like all these different pieces that were in play didn't happen to fall in line perfectly. And it's like if you have too many moving parts where you have actors trying to hit their blocking, reading their lines, not knowing how many steps they need to, because they needed to have, for a follow shot, they needed to be able to, get their lines across, and it needed to end right at the end of the shot.
Yep.
And all that stuff is tricky when you're doing one shot. So it's important to be able to rehearse that with your crew too, not just actors.
So going into it, did you kind of know that that was going to be your beast shot to tackle that day?
We did it at the end of the day for that reason.
Okay, so you saved it till the very end.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you account for anything else pre-production wise that like you wanted to make sure you covered? As far as we know this is going to take the longest, we're the most worried about this shot because we know we haven't been able to rehearse it because we haven't had access to the space. So we're doing X, Y, Z to be as prepared as possible.
On that one, I think it was just shot list stuff.
Yeah.
I can't quite remember exactly on that one. It was just it was a days stock the feature film. Yeah, that one was a days.
What would you do now differently?
I think on that one, it would be if you have the opportunity, work with the cinematographer and the actors. It's weird to think about that now because in digital age and like online age and being able to afford people's time, whether they're donating it or whether you're paying them, it's like, do you just have stand-ins, read the lines, send the footage off, make sure that those actors, know exactly what they're going to do because we had rehearsals and things like that. But then there's also that added difficulty of having it in space on a one shot and made it tricky. So it's like, but sometimes you just can't prevent everything from happening. Like you're going to have shit go wrong on set no matter what.
Yeah.
So sometimes
embrace that now.
Yeah. Sometimes rehearsals, we did, and you were actually on set for Idea Guy, which that's on LowerGentry Studios newsletter too. Just plugging that newsletter. But it's a short film that we did, and it opens up with a oneer, and that one we actually rehearsed. And
there was a day that it was dedicated. The rehearsal was dedicated to that shot. Mm-hmm. So I would say that's definitely something that's changed from Stockton.
Because it was we had the intricate movement of the two different characters and where we wanted the camera to start, where we wanted it to end, where we wanted it to follow. And so we just wanted to make sure that we got that all down in the space. We still had to do several takes of it live, but it came together because we did a half a day of rehearsal on just that one shot.
Oh, yeah.
And we got the shot done in maybe like an hour or two.
No, I think that was definitely a worthwhile endeavor.
Otherwise, we would have been there for 6 hours trying to get one shot.
That would have been your whole shoot day. The movie would have been that shot.
Yes. And then we would have been like, oh, okay, well, the rest of the script, we're just going to have to film in just a wide static or some crap.
Yep, that's it.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Well, there we are. I think that's probably about good for rehearsals.
That feels like that is the number one thing I think I've learned for sure.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
That rehearsal is so much more than your actors saying the lines the way the director wants them to. Especially if you've got any fight choreo or dance choreo or specific locations that are weird to work around, like shooting in a kitchen that opens up into a living room, but there aren't a bunch of extra side spaces because it's actually somebody's house. Mm-hmm. It's not a sound stage. So you can't set up a bunch of fake lights and everything to create all this additional light. You've got to set it up so that your shot tracks through and you get enough light without catching any of those lights on camera.
Victoria's talking about Idea Guy.
Yeah, that was the Idea Guy shot. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's that. It is more than just actor rehearsal.
Yeah.
There's a lot that you can do to save time on set day if you can get your people.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can just learn how to shoot two people in front of a table if you want to do something quick. Write a script like that and keep it interesting.
Yeah.
Like Quentin Tarantino does sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. The dialogue stuff. I was going to say the importance of the dialogue, like Kevin Smith and like Tarantino. When you rehearse it over and over again, you get comfortable with it, and it does come off a lot more natural than you can't fake that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. I think a good sign off is a succinct one. So, goodbye.
Bye.